Hello and welcome back to Shelf Center. This is Bryce. Thanks so much for stopping by. Thanks for liking and subscribing. If this is something you end up enjoying, you never know, it could happen. Well, this is my volume 2 in my, chance to talk about books that I really want to talk about, but they don't always end up in like a top 10 list, but they're still a 5-star read. They're still a top read. I just don't talk about as much, and so here's another one. All fantasy. I need to do one that is science fiction, but this is, again, another top 5. There's really no order to it. They're all 5-star reads to me, of course, and so let's jump into it. First things first, this one I don't see a lot of love for, and I really wish there were more. So, Acacia by David Anthony Durham. This is just so good. It's so great. I love how it's kind of got this like shiny cover, but I love this series. I love David Anthony Durham's writing. I call this Game of Thrones light. It's kind of, it like follows some kids really, and which Game of Thrones I think does so well, or A Song of Ice and Fire really. And they're royals, and they, you know, and we kind of just, they go through some stuff. And so it's a really, really cool book. I love it. It's The War with the Mine, or Mean maybe is what it means. I never know when I start pronouncing these, and I need to do more mispronouncing fantasy names, but I absolutely just adore this, and it's a trilogy, completed trilogy, all that, so you can read the whole thing. I do need to finish it still, but this is one that I've been putting off because at first it was, I never wanted to finish it. I have this problem where I just like keep putting things off because I never want to finish I want to stay in this world forever. But now it's more been like, because I've got to do some rereading, but I really, really love it. It's great. I know I have weird things, and everyone else can just go, oh, I'm going to blaze through a bunch of books because I love them. Blogging and then YouTube channel have really screwed all that up for me because there's always some new and shiny thing that can distract this mood reader, okay? Well, here's one. You can focus because there's just one book in it. It's standalone, but again, I've talked about Janie Wirtz. It's before multiple times on the channel. I love Janie Wirtz, but To Ride Hell's Chasm, every now and then it comes up. I see people on X/Twitter talking about this one specifically lately, and I adore this book. It is so good. And again, standalone. I compared it in my review on Goodreads to Equilibrium. I promise it makes sense to some degree, but essentially you're following Mikkel, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And he's essentially, he's like this, he's an outlander, you know, he's a foreigner to this area, so he's looked on with lots of suspicion, lots of racism, lots of things going on, but he's got this like, and this is where the Equilibrium comparison comes out, this really cool like kung fu type like fighting style that's way different than anyone else there has, which is really cool. What's great is that Janie Wirtz like has experienced all the things in the world, I'm pretty convinced, and therefore can write about them very well. So I mean, you have down to like the noble horses that you're just like, you love as much as Bill the Pony from Lord of the Rings. I absolutely, and again, it's standalone, but it's such a good book, and it's stuck with me for many years now. All right, this is another fantasy and one of my favorite series, and I just absolutely love the series. I called this my reading crack, because it's so good. This is the second book, though, in the series that I don't always talk about. This is what I'm here for, is the books I don't always talk about. But The Warded Man is the first one, or The Painted Man if you're in like Commonwealth areas, I think, England or maybe. But it's weird when they do that. I don't know. I think The Warded Man really does make more sense, but Painted, I guess, also makes sense. And maybe if you're trying to hide the ball a little bit. But I love this series. It's kind of got the like, what I like about it a lot is, this one, what's great about it is that you've got like a different culture that you kind of bring in to this whole mad world. And essentially it's like post-apocalyptic almost, because humans are trying to survive against these demons that come out at night. and the only way they're surviving really is to put wards around their houses and stuff like that. And so, you know, of course you're going to be stronger in like a city, but there's still kind of like farmsteads, and there's messengers that kind of go between cities. How do they do that? And which you learn pretty quick. It's not a big mystery there, but it's so cool because it's got like a lot of like zombie, like why we like zombie stories, because there's just like us against the monsters, and you're kind of crowded in, and then but who's the real monster? And so when you are fighting monsters, but also have other people to deal with, and then you've got this great magic system, which I just love. But you have it's so cool that the kind of discovery process, I guess, of these wards, and then again how they're utilized. And I love a magic system that's like you understand the magic system, and then you kind of push it and you kind of apply it in different ways, and I really like that. I think Brandon Sanderson does a great job of like, here's the magic system, you kind of get it on one level, and then he'll push it and kind of mess with, and so help your understanding, one, of it, but two, kind of push it in ways that maybe you didn't think about, and I think that's just so clever and fun. So anyway, I love the series, it's so good. There's even like a music magic to it, and that's cool too. All right, these are ones, I talk a lot of Malazan on the channel, okay, I will admit it, but I don't always talk about the E&C Esselmont books, and so I wanted to point these out because I love these, and if you're a Malazan fan, you're missing out if you're not reading the Ice books. They're so good. They're, you know, I do put it out there like they're 5-star reads or 10 shelf reads is my rating system that I'm totally messing up on these videos goes. But I kind of look at it as I will agree that the Erikson books, I like them better overall. But let's say that Erikson did not exist and we only had Malazan through Ice, we would be in great hands. And these are brilliant and I love them. It's just sometimes we get this comparison effect in our reading, and I think you have to kind of take a step back and say, what am I actually comparing this to? And I just think these are so good, and they're a little more straightforward. They're a little less like dump you into the middle of stuff, even though they still are, like Erikson is so fond of doing. I absolutely love these. You get just essentially Erikson and Esselmont gamed all these characters, gamed this world in like a Dungeons and Dragons type of game. And so they really were able to explore the characters, really get down deep into it, but it doesn't read like a campaign or anything like that. Nobody's putting a campaign to words, but what they're doing is they're able to explore these characters and know what they're made of. And so Ian Esselmont has his own characters, I believe, that he played that appear in the Erikson stuff, but that he really focuses on. So you really want to read it for that. You want to read it there's just so many other things that he explores that, you know, one of the Ice books, not this one, goes more into the Segula, and that's one of my favorite just concepts in all of fantasy. That's just like martial society that like fight each other for position, and essentially there's a whole like you just fight each other and that's how you get to the next position, and that's how you can make your way up in this society. And that one of these like almost elder gods types ends up in this society, just accidentally appears there, ends up fighting enough people that he ranks 7th overall until he could just get himself out of there. And it's just like stuff like that. It's just, I love it. It's brilliant. And I just love how that's played with. But anyway, the Ice books, I'm telling you, they're so good. All right, then finally, and some might call this science fiction, but these are fantasy. They're not even science fantasy. They're full-blown fantasy, even though it's set in a dying Earth. But Songs of the Dying Earth, I will tell you, it's my favorite anthology of all time. It is edited by George R. Martin, Gardner Dozois. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know. But stories in honor of Jack Vance. These stories by like Neil Gaiman, George R. Martin himself, Tad Williams, Robert Silverberg, Glenn Cook, a whole novella by Dan Simmons. They're so good. They're so clever. They utilize the same characters in Jack Vance's songs, well, in and Jack Vance's Dying Earth series, which George R. R. Martin just loves. He loves Jack Vance. I was just watching Library of a Vikings channel where he went and interviewed a bunch of authors at Dragon Con, is that what it was, or the World Con? Anyway, at a con that George R. R. Martin was at, which would be, I guess, the World Con. And literally George recommended, his recommendation was a Jack Vance book. It was The Demon Princes, which I also own. But I thought that was cool, but that's definitely made me think of, I got to put this on a list because it's so good. Just read the first couple stories alone. Like, usually there's some like, meh, like books in an anthology, like, yeah, you know, like you're going to be hit or miss for the most part. Like, I love Kurt Vonnegut, but some of his short stories are just terrible, and some are really good. But some are super boring. This one, not even one, even a little bit. I just, like, there's definitely better than others, and there's some that I think I even went down to like 3 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, but there really isn't any bad one in here. They're so good. And again, the really good ones are that good. They're just clever, and it's a fun world, and it definitely made me read Jack Vance's Dying Earth series, which I've read a couple of, not the whole thing, of course, because I can't commit to anything. But anyway, that's my list. Thank you so much for stopping by, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.